What's up YouTube? Capital G here, talking Calvin Tahan's first place Super Quantums that he actually won ARG Richmond, Virginia over the weekend. I didn't even realize that Richmond, Virginia was going on. I knew that there was Richmond this month, but I thought it was later in the month. I done missed it, and I feel bad because I live only like 2.5 hours to Richmond. I go to the regionals sometimes whenever they have them. But anyways, shout outs to the card guys being in person, getting the deck list. It was a very informative deck profile, and congratulations to Kelvin Tahan. He's a very good player. So here's the thing about this deck. This is essentially Towers Turbo 2.0. I mean, you can call it Super Quantums, which the deck definitely is, but generally the win condition is summoning Great Magnus, and like most decks don't really have an out to this. In fact, this card is actually considerably harder to kill than something like Towers, because while Towers did take the attack of special summon monsters, this guy can actually just fight a back against special summon monsters. Like, all of these big unkillable Towers like monsters, they all die to Honest, but this one can kind of like how you used to be able to go into like Diamond Crab King or whatnot. Not only is this card technically stronger than Towers because 3600 attack is higher than 3000, but it can actually spin things. We'll talk about that later in a second. So this is a very interesting deck list. There are some cards that, I played Super Quantums before, and I've actually summoned Magnus against like Mermail, and it's just like, okay, well, can you just save me 10 minutes? And can you just scoop if you don't have any outs to this? A buddy of mine was playing against this deck, and he was playing Pepe, and it's like, okay, you don't have any outs to this, just scoop. For one, actually, let's just go ahead and touch on that. Utopia the Lightning will be one card that everybody immediately points to, like, yo, that outs, that outs Magnus. It can go to 5,000 attack. That's not actually true. See, the thing about Magnus is Magnus actually has that, it can spin back to the deck effect, and it can be used during both players' turns, and it doesn't even target. So, RIP to Cosmo ships, but it's not like they can get over this anyways. So hypothetically, if a person playing Draco Pals or Dark Draco Pals, if you summon Utopia, like all the Super Quantum player will do is just simply detach a material. Let's say they have 5 or whatever, right? They'll detach a material, they'll spin your Utopia back, then your regular Utopia, which you use to rank up into Utopia the Lightning, that gets trapped in the graveyard. It's essentially stuck there, and you can never make Utopia again. So once you make it that one time and it gets spun, you basically lose. Like you now have no more outs, Ignister and Dinister and all of the, like, none of those cards do anything to this. They'll eventually keep attacking you. I think it's kind of weird that he only ran one copy, because I don't know. I guess you could say that the second copy would just be win more, but I don't know. Maybe you could see it coming out sometimes. I guess maybe there's no point, because he probably would have had to cut like the Utopia the Lightning and plus Utopia, and maybe those came up for like doing big chunks of damage. Now, in my testing, I have found Reasoning to be really good. I was running a janky build of like Thunder Dragons and Volcanic Shells, mainly as a way to constantly use the field spell over and over again. But what I'm realizing is the better way to play this deck, rather than having to worry about, how you're going to constantly pitch cards for this, is just like get your summons off, get more summons off in one turn than your opponent expects. And you look at this, it's like, okay, you already got your normal summon, but look how many additional summons he has in this variant. You've got Teleport, which can get you your blue layer. It's only targeting this deck that I can see anyways. You've got your Teleport. You've got Reasoning, which should almost always go off. I guess that's pretty much completely luck-based if it doesn't. But, this is an archetype very similar to Cosmos, where your levels are all over the place. Like Super Quantums, you've got a 1, a 3, a 5, and a 4, and then you've got some more 4s here. So your levels are all over the place. Brilliant Fusion is huge in this deck. Brilliant Fusion not only gives you another normal summon, which is really important in this deck, because then you can get like green and white off at the same time, and maybe like teleport this one. But Brilliant Fusion gets you a Trick Clown in the graveyard, and it gets you a Saffronite in the graveyard, a Garnet in the graveyard. And since he's playing 3 copies of Instant Fusion, it's very easy to maybe instant fusion out a Norden, then go into like a rank 4 XC play. It's kind of crazy that all of these are actually generic. And I like that instant fusion isn't just a Norden or bust in this deck. You know what I mean? You can actually run Panzer Dragon as well. That helps you go for your rank 5s. Again, very important that actually all these Super Quantums they're generic. I don't know why they made them generic. I think the archetype isn't that big, so that's probably why they made them generic. And then I looked at the traps and I was like, how does this work? The traps in theory are, I mean, they kind of like would take away that one out maybe your opponent has to Great Magnus. But then at the same time, if you're like one card away from, summoning Great Magnus, you can just pitch the trap. You can pitch a Solemn Warning, you can pitch a Solemn Strike, and then you can just summon Great Magnus. And again, decks like Mermill, decks like Cosmos, they don't have any outs that I know of. Monarch is essentially the only deck that has, I would say, a consistent out, because they can just play Domain, they can Tribute Summon, and then they can attack for 3,600, and this guy's 3,600. But at the same time, in battle phase, you can simply spin that Domain of the True Monarchs back to their deck, and then their Monarch will more than likely just die in battle, and they can't search it back because, well, depending on how many materials. If you happen to have this guy out with 6 materials, he is essentially he's a Thunder King Ryo, but it's only against your opponent, which is crazy. He's essentially a Thunder King Ryo just for one side of the field. So your opponent will never be able to Tenacity it back. They'll never be able to, activate Pantheism and do it that way. So they'll essentially have to draw it the old-fashioned way. And during that time, you can just beat the crap out of them because nothing in Monarchs is going to stop Great Magnus. And, this is kind of like the new age Towers deck. But again, this is actually harder to out because there isn't just any good generic rank 4 that can out this. I mean, again, Utopia, the Lightning can technically out it, but they can simply spin that card without targeting during the player's turn. And once you lose that card, once your Utopia hits the graveyard, I don't really know of any other outs that you're going to have. I mean, this dude on field with 4 materials, I don't know, man. Maybe Cosmos are looking at their deck and like, oh shit, now we got to run Honest again, or now we have to run Jurigato, because I think Jurigato. No. Jurigato could make a Dart Destroyer 4,000. Oh no, wait. I think Jurigato may target though, so I don't know if you can target your own Dart Destroyer. I'm not sure if Dart Destroyer is your opponent can't target. Yeah, it's your opponent can't target. So yeah, I guess Jurigato will work. But they may have to run that. So I'm looking at this, guys, and I'm wondering how good this deck is going to be. It's going to be interesting because just this deck existing and the matter, the fact that it has won a high-level tournament. He went completely undefeated in Swiss, and then, well, I think he drew, but he never lost in Swiss. And then, obviously, he won out in top 16 and, finals and all that good stuff. But it's interesting because now I feel like we're going to start having to like migrate the the kaijus back into like side decks, or maybe like some battle enhancers like Honest and stuff like that, because I felt like for a long time the kaijus were more or less a product of Ptolemaeus and Cyber Infinity, and I felt like when Cyber Infinity was essentially axed out of the format by way of Ptolemaeus being banned, there wasn't a ton of utility for it. I mean, you wouldn't want to play kaijus just for something like Rafflesia or maybe against a Dark Law and that beast or whatever. But with this deck being like back in the meta, or this deck being in the meta, we have another you summon one monster and it shall not die type deck. I don't know, man. People are gonna have to start citing like kaijus again. It's crazy, this format. It's like we have Monarchs with Magical Explosion. We now have Towers 2.0. Like, this format is so just all over the place. It's crazy, man. It's like either you get to play against a monster that can't die to like pretty much anything, or you don't play at all and you just sit there and watch your opponent just draw cards and then activate Explosion with Life Equalizer. So let me know what you think. I will say this. I'm happy to see Super Quantums on the map. I knew that this card, I mean, people knew when they saw this card that it was kind of too good not to ever see any type of play. And if you can make a deck that could summon it enough, I think he said that the likelihood of summoning this going first, he said it's something like 87%. That's high enough to win like a major event, because you can go first enough times, or if you side, you can side in your Dark Holes, Twin Twisters, blow up back row. And again, once you summon this, it's pretty much just GG against like every deck in the meta. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching as always.